welcome back, everyone. Okay, so welcome, everyone. We have Alayna here, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about social media today. As you can see, please ensure your microphone is muted for the duration of the workshop, and you can pop chat questions into the chat for this one. So make sure that you have that able for you. Alayna, before we, I'm going to butcher saying your last name like I do every time. Would you mind introducing yourself by your name so that I get it right?
Yeah, so my name is Alayna Hryclik.
Hryclik.
Yeah.
Thank you. So everyone, this is Alayna Hryclik. She's the Forest City sweetheart behind Soft Flirt, a home decor and apparel lifestyle brand that's a combination of textiles, hand lettering, screen printing to create a minimalistic items with a tender focus. She's a graduate of Western University with a Bachelor's of Fine Arts, specializing in studio art and a major in English language and literature. Alayna is on the board of directors of the Forest City Gallery here in London and is passionate about advocating for artists and building community around the arts through this work. Welcome, Alayna.
Thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm just gonna kind of jump into things. Hello, my name is Alayna, again, as we just introduced, but I have sort of given a variation of this workshop multiple times before, but just as a little disclaimer, it has thus far always been with an artist focus or focus on the arts. So I tried to pull some more relevant industry examples for the different kind of industries that you all are working within. So not everything is going to apply necessarily for your business, but if you can kind of pull different aspects of different examples, anything that you find would be helpful, just kind of alter this information to suit your own business needs if you can. So we're going to jump into, why is this not working now? 1 second. Not letting me click on my presentation. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so the main thing with social media for business is choosing the right platform for your work. Personally, I primarily focus on Instagram. You don't have to use all of these platforms. You don't have to use multiple platforms, any combination, whatever you're drawn to and whatever feels like the right platform for the audience that is going to be looking to your business on social media is absolutely the right thing. But these are the main ones, and we'll talk a little bit about most of them, but mainly about Instagram, just as most businesses lately find that it is a really great home base for sharing social media online for your business. Most of these platforms will come with some built-in insights and analytics. I like to start with this because I think it's really helpful to know who your audience is and know who you're trying to reach with your social media, because different apps will have different audiences kind of sort of reaching for those apps. So if you find that your demographic is younger, maybe you want to go for the TikTok, maybe you want to go for more of, the video demographic. My audience, as you can see in these charts, is basically female millennials. Female millennials, myself included, love Instagram, so I know that that's the place for me right now. But yeah, so a lot of these apps will have analytics that can be really helpful. You can see what kind of content you've already shared that's doing well, so you can do more of that. That can be helpful in narrowing your focus for future content that you want to do. Anything that's performed well in the past, you can kind of generally assume that that's sort of what people like about what you've been sharing, and you can try to think of more ways to incorporate similar or to expand on that sort of thing. So for myself, with this example, a lot of my community-minded posts have had the most engagement. So for me, that's something I'm passionate about including within my business, is ways to participate in the community and work with other small businesses, that sort of thing. So I know that those kinds of posts perform well. Also responding to COVID has garnered some good responses for me. So I know that speaking to kind of what's trending and speaking to my community has so far been a great way to use Instagram. So again, just kind of highlights maybe what you're doing well. And then within each individual post, there's individual post insights, which also just can be really helpful. They've since updated with Instagram specifically. You can see any active current story shares, which is a great helpful insight because you're not always tagged in those posts. So it's nice to be able to see who's sharing your content and what they're saying about it, and you can access that quickly from within the post. But here you can also see like how many times this post has been shared to others, how many times it's been saved, and that sort of thing. So really helpful back-end kind of work behind these apps. Again, I'm using Instagram as the example just because it's what I use the most, but there are analytics built into other apps as well. YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, all of those, you can see different analytics as well. So with social media, I kind of find that there's a general rule of thumb that there's sort of two styles. So you can definitely combine these. You can do any sort of, content sharing style that you personally feel represents your brand the best. But the two sort of main ones I would say would be like more of a relatable and engaging content. So for myself, I'm selling a lot of apparel. I've got sort of smaller price point items with multiple customers. So I want to have a lot of engagement and a lot of conversation back and forth with my customers. So that means that my language is a little bit more casual, a little bit more towards kind of creating that back and forth dynamic with people. But if you're maybe a business that's focused more on business to business, or maybe you're focused right now on finding investors, that sort of thing, then you might want to go for more of like a sleek and professional approach to your social media, just so that your business is highlighted in a way that you need it to be highlighted for whatever first impression you want to achieve on social media. And with that, just to expand a little bit more about that, your social media is your online voice of your brand. So think about how you want to speak to your audience. For me, the voice of Softflirt is very casual. I want my customers and my followers to be able to speak to me like we're friends, like we know each other. I talk to them as if they know everything I've ever done with Softflirt. It's very casual, and I assume that they know my presence in the community, what I've done, that sort of thing. So it's a lot of, hey y'all, like here's the new thing, it's dropping on Friday, like set your alarms. Like it's very casual conversation. But for me, that's what gets me the most engagement and the most kind of participation back and forth with my customers. But if that's not for your business, that's okay too. It's just helpful to know your voice so that you can kind of put that back into just your captions, your stories, how you speak in videos, if you're doing any video work, that sort of thing. So something that kind of goes hand in hand with social media would become your personal community that that you work within, but also your online network. And a lot of this can be grown online through social media. You can show up for your community and engage, and that network will sort of be created around that. I don't have a lot of experience developing like business to business sort of traditional networking, bring a stack of business cards, that sort of thing. But for me, my networking has always been participating online, following and liking and commenting and sharing other people's work. And also, I say this every time I give this talk, but being nice online is the best tool in your arsenal, because your reputation will follow you and your career around London. And if people know that you're a kind human that's easy to talk to, it's just going to be easier for you to kind of continue that on. And the nice thing about social media too, with that approach to networking, if you're not so good at the in-person, one-on-one or talking to strangers and, making those connections, it's a little bit easier to do that online. You can You can throw a like someone's way, and again, like share their content, and it's a little bit less like intimidating than traditional networking can be. And another way to expand on that would be to collaborate with those in your community. So I do a lot of this in like every aspect of my work and my volunteer work and my personal life. But it's a really great way to grow your own audience. If you can collaborate on something, then your audience gets to see this person's work and their audience gets to see yours and vice versa. So it can create a lot of nice kind of chains of sharing followers and that sort of thing, helps you cross promote. And this can look like a lot of different things, but the main sort of the easy ones to think about would be giveaways, collaborating on a project, hosting events together. And then the more fun ones like a creative challenge, which a lot of artists will do. But even simply talking about other people's businesses can help to expand your community. And within Leap In, like you have a really unique opportunity to get to know other local businesses that are kind of in the same state of starting this journey together. So it's a great way to kind of test some of this out and like work on, you know, trial running some collaborations before you really reach out to other people that are maybe in a little bit more in like similar business categories, things like that. You can sort of trial run it now and get used to working together. All right, and then, so yeah, we can talk about what things you should be sharing. Some of these are pretty obvious, obviously, but across different platforms, you can share different things. So I like to sort of break it down into photos, videos, and text. With photos, obviously finished work is the easy one to think about, but people also love to see, especially if you're an artist or if you work in retail or if it's anything to do with more of a visual aspect, you have a product, there's really great packaging, we have really good physical branding, any sort of close-ups you can share of that kind of stuff, any progress photos, work in progress, sneak peeks, things like that. If you can work something into a styled photo shoot or a lookbook, share that kind of stuff. People love to see where people work, so your workspace can be something you share. Any sort of customer client photos, whether that's just like a casual snap someone, you know, tagged you in, just make sure you ask if they're okay with it being shared on your feed, or you can always kind of reshare in a story. Or they can kind of act as testimonials as well. Another thing you can share too would be like professional photos of yourself or your team. I say professional just so that you don't kind of go the mirror selfie route. That's fine for your personal social media, but try to keep your business social media to be like a little bit more intentional with anytime you're sharing maybe content that's not directly related to your physical product or your work. And then the last one on this list, I think it's absolutely okay to share like inspirational photos that you like gravitate towards, or maybe it's really relevant to what you do. But just make sure that if you can get permission to share it first, do that. If not, make sure you're properly crediting sources, especially if it's an artist's work that you're sharing to your platform. Just think about it in terms of if your work was shared and it wasn't led back to you, it doesn't feel so great, so try not to do that to other people. And then, so for videos, different platforms work well with video. Instagram, of course, we've got stories, you can share videos, you can have videos in your feed, and then there's IGTV as well. If you are kind of speaking to some trendy things, TikTok works really well. Or if you want long form videos, YouTube is great. So a lot of different things you can be sharing. Any sort of video content, people can tend to really gravitate towards that just because it's a longer attention span to be like grabbing for someone instead of just a photo that they can quickly scroll by. So if you have a way to turn something into some video content, make something a little bit more dynamic, it's a great way to extend that you know, attention span of your follower or someone who's just stumbling across your social media. So again, similar to photos, you can share process, behind the scenes, workspace, flipbooks, promotional videos, instructional videos, any sort of FAQ, anything that works to your specific business, you can do in video format. Honestly, give it a try. Even if you do sort of want to take a more casual approach, you can do like a story on Instagram of you talking about your work. That kind of counts as video work too. And then we come to text. So text-based information is great to share across like most platforms. If you're finding that you really need to share a lot of like more long form text, Twitter is going to be a good platform for you, or Facebook. Anywhere that you can like directly share a link that's within that post itself. It's a little bit easier to do that on Facebook and Twitter if you're sharing frequent text and it's like a longer, more specific text item, we'll say. Or if you can benefit from it becoming like a Twitter thread, that sort of thing, especially if it's engaging with current topics or popular culture. If you can, engage with a larger community that way, it's something to consider. But even on your more visual platforms, you can use text to share useful information, any press, instructions, FAQ, text-based work. So if it's artwork, for me, like I'm making graphic design text posts that are just like a digital piece. Any important announcements about your work, inspirational text posts, or content that becomes part of like a text template, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a second, and then I've got an example later on. But if you would benefit from frequent text in any form, you can kind of brand that and style that in your brand's colors, throw your logo on there, that sort of thing. Make it look really dynamic and exciting to be part of your feed. And then another thing, if you have any customer reviews or testimonials, that's another thing to share that's great. Website content, and then any events that you're hosting and you want to have people come to them or show up to them online, make sure you're sharing that in text form as well. So for your bio on social media, this feels like, it feels like a no-brainer, but make sure that you're putting relevant information in your bio. This is the first impression people are going to see of your business online. So make sure that they can quickly find what they need to find. If you have a website, put that link in your bio. If you're active on other social media platforms, you can add those in there. But I think most importantly, try to give people a sense of what you do succinctly. If you have a storefront you sell out of, put that address in, that sort of thing. All kind of no-brainer, but just make sure that it's a good first impression of your business so that people want to stick around. And a way to kind of extend that first impression is using highlights. So specifically, this is more towards Instagram, but they're a nice way to extend your first impression, because when people click on your profile, they see your bio, and right below it, they see your highlights. So if you have those nice and clearly labeled, maybe it's frequently asked questions, it's about you, it's your studio, finished work, that sort of thing. If it looks inviting to click on and to explore and learn more about your business, people are more likely to stick around and like go through those highlights, and then more likely to follow you after that. So if you can put useful information in your highlights, definitely do that. There's an artist that I'm going to feature a little later on in here. If you're curious about using highlights, I'll point them out in the future. You can jot their name down and take a look at what they do if you want to see a good example of what people do. Hashtags are something that you can definitely use to benefit kind of participating with specific subject matter or popular movements, popular culture, location hashtags, that sort of thing. The main thing to note when you're using hashtags, be concise and specific. That's going to get the most kind of crossover possibility. And then also make sure that you're posting them kind of, I think within 24 hours. You really want it to be like immediately when you post it, you either have them kind of at the very bottom of your caption, or you can comment on that post with hashtags as like the first comment. But outside of that 24-hour window, it gets really buried in that like hashtag feed. So if you're going to get seen by using those hashtags, you want it to be something that you're doing kind of right away. Just something to note. I will say that exposure is kind of happening with hashtags, especially on TikTok these days, but also on Twitter. So you can really use them to your benefit if you're ready and prepared to use that as like a trendy kind of approach to growing your brand online. And then, yeah, I like to just highlight my personal opinion is I think it's important to separate your personal from your professional social media. Maybe you don't see that as important as important right now, but the more your business grows, the nicer it is to have that separation between your personal and your business. So yeah, I recommend keep your work and your personal separate, keep your personal private. You want to be personable, but you don't want to share all of your personal details or information. And that goes for controversial opinions too. And just remember that nothing dies on the internet. So if you're using social media to build a career, just be conscious of that and with all the information that you share. And with that, it's always good to practice good social media etiquette. So you're going to grow a following organically through genuine content, engagement, growing your community, that sort of thing. But if you're doing the like follow for follow, you like mass follow 50 people and then unfollow whoever doesn't follow you back, that sort of thing. People can tell when you're being dishonest. It looks shady, so don't do it. People can buy likes and followers. Again, people can tell it looks dishonest. Don't do it. It might happen slower than you want it to, but organic content engagement is always going to be better than anything fabricated or purchased. So just something to keep in mind. And then talking about frequency. So a lot of the times, I think people think you have to post like every day or you have to post multiple times a week, that sort of thing. I think it's much more important just to be consistent than it is to be frequent just for frequency's sake. So if you're posting once a week, that's fine. Try to continue to post every week, once a week. Doesn't always have to be the same time. You'll start to kind of learn where you get the most engagement. Some of those analytics and insights will kind of tell you when your audience is the most active. So for me, I find Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings tend to be when most of my followers are online. So I tend to try to post those evenings, those times, which ends up working for me because I usually have my market booth open on the Saturday. So I post something on the Friday to kind of remind them, come on in, that sort of thing. But yeah, you can use Instagram stories as a way to stay on people's radar if you don't have active content to share in your feed. And it's really fine if you don't have anything relevant to share in your feed at the moment, but just try to be posting fairly consistently, once a week, once every 2 weeks if you're starting out, that sort of thing. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about that. So for branding, just want to touch on this a little bit. I would assume that most of you guys have logos already developed. With your logos, it's always helpful to kind of think about like a color story that represents your brand. Maybe there's fonts that you gravitate towards that represent your brand, that sort of thing. If you can find some like consistencies that you can share again through your social media, it's just a great way to just become really recognizable as something of your brand online. So if you're able to DIY that, that's awesome. Otherwise, I would set aside a bit of a budget to hire a graphic designer who can help you create some of those branding elements. Creating a color palette is great. Also creating, I think what I was mentioning before, of like a sort of a template with your logo and sort of like your brand colors that you can sort of be popping in different text pieces of information that are important to be sharing. any sort of way you can add consistency in a visual cue with your social media is going to benefit you with being recognizable to your audience. Yeah. So just as a little highlight, this is my Instagram and sort of some of my branding in action. My highlight colors up top here are sort of what I like to familiarize people with when it comes to my brand. So these are some frequently used colors for me. My latest product is in a blue tone, but I don't normally have a lot of blues. But that's why that kind of is accompanied by 2 other photos, just so that it becomes like a little moment in the feed instead of, you know, sticking out like a sore thumb. But for me, another visual cue is my handwriting. So you'll see it pop up all over. It's in my products. It's in my event branding. It's in my like physical store location on like my chalkboard in the background there. So that's another visual cue that this is a SoftLert post. So your followers end up almost being able to tell like that it's something that's your content before they even really realize what they're seeing. And that kind of familiarity is going to really help you grow your brand online and your presence in social media. There's a couple ways to DIY those. I should have flipped these around, but so for content creation, if you want to work on you know, modifying some photos so that they look super dynamic, or creating, again, like those sort of template type things to be sharing text-based work. If you don't have access to Photoshop, Illustrator, Procreate, things like that, Canva is a great free desktop app as well as like mobile app that you can use to create content. Snapseed is a really easy photo editing app. You can kind of sort of batch process, edit a lot of things quite easily. So I like to recommend it for, you know, beginners that maybe don't want to get into the Lightroom kind of thing. And then Over is a new one for me, but you can edit photo and video and create kind of more dynamic photo with text options. And they've got templates already set up and things that are kind of, the work's already done for you, just pop in your information. So if all of this is really daunting to you, there's a lot of apps with templates that you can use to kind of easily create some dynamic content. And for anyone who benefits from scheduling things out, planning things out in advance, there's a lot of scheduling apps for social media. So if that's you, write some of these down: Planoly, Hootsuite, Buffer, and Later. Personally, I'm not really ever prepared enough to plan my content ahead of time more than maybe 3 days before. But for other people, if you're able to plan it out, the nice thing is you can kind of get a visual of what your feed is going to look like ahead of time. So if anything looks out of place, you can kind of tweak that, replace it with something else. But yeah, it's just a great way to plan things out, especially if you're working with a team. You can all kind of have a visual of everything together instead of having to kind of sort of more clunkily share it all via Slack or wherever else you're sharing content. And if all of that sounds super daunting, that's also okay. Social media management is a thing. A lot of brands use social media managers and content creators. So if it isn't your strong suit to be doing all of that, that's fine. But you want to find some budget for it and then find somebody who works well within your style. There's a couple local options that I would just send you to kind of get an idea of what like a social media manager, content creator will look like. Jennifer Gall from Something Simple is super awesome. She works with a lot of smaller businesses. She's worked with Photoshop in the past, which I think we all know very well. And then Justine is empowered by Fourth Wave. She's someone who has more of a holistic approach to branding, which I kind of thought might suit a couple people in the LEAP cohort, so I thought I'd include her as well. But again, just take a look if social media management is maybe something that sounds appealing to you, and then you can do further research from there to find somebody who fits with your budget and with your style, and all that sort of stuff. And all that said, If you follow another business or you follow different entrepreneurs and you love what they're doing, try to figure out what you like that they're doing and pull inspiration from that. You don't want to copy anyone directly. It seems like a silly thing to be, you don't want to copy someone's social media feed, but you don't want to copy anyone's content ever. So pull inspiration, find ways that you can adapt the things that you like that other people are doing to your own situation. If you're feeling creatively blocked and lost, it's just a great way to figure out, okay, like what do I actually like and how can I make this part of my business's brand online? So that's pretty much my big spiel, but now I've got a whole whack of examples to show you. So we will start with Instagram. Again, like I was saying, most businesses will have an Instagram as a home base. If not, use it as their main social media. The benefits being that there's shop integration with certain e-commerce platforms. It allows you to engage quickly and easily. And you can structure it to kind of the tone of the voice of your brand that you want to be engaged with. So this is what mine looks like. Again, we've already seen it a couple times here, but couple things just to point out. I like to highlight what kind of within this, what other people are doing and what kind of content that I'm sharing. So you can see here that I've got this magnolia tree is sort of more of like a mood or like an inspiration picture to just sort of establish a springtime vibe that suited the brand. I've got graphic design content, finished product, visuals of my store, and then a lot of COVID content because that was all I did for a couple months there, was just create graphic design around COVID. And then some mock-ups for future design work and some customer photos. So that's sort of a quick bite of what my Instagram looks like. This is an artist who I follow that I find has a really good approach to the sort of behind the scenes video work. So if that appeals to you or your business at all, she's a good one to take a look at. I also think she has a really good sense of kind of the unstaged. It's something like if she's taken the photo of herself, but it's not a selfie. And it looks like it suits her feed and it's still professional while still being, familiar and professional. There's also some video or some photos of her studio space and then different product shots. Like if you have a shop with a physical product and you've got a bunch of orders packed and you're heading to the post office, it's always fun to show like, this is what we're doing. This was a really successful week, that sort of thing. People like to know that, they're supporting somebody that other people also like to support. So if you can show that you've got multiple orders, it's always fun. This is the artist that that I recommend looking at if you want to learn more about highlights and using highlights really well. This is like a illustrator and pattern designer and artist. So a lot of digital content, which is, fun. And then also some video work, just like flipping through things. So really, really casual video and some finished products and things like that. So if you are interested in the highlights, jot them down. This is Kelvin, our friend Kelvin of the Fritter Shop. I like to highlight this just because at this point in time, I know that Kelvin was using Jenny from Something Simple. I don't know that he still is using a social media manager, but it's a great way just to show off like how consistent the feed looked at that point in time. Also some collaboration with a hot sauce company that's also in the market. There's some photos of Kelvin that look quite professional and intentionally taken. And then lots of product photos and in different settings. So yeah, good way to look at that. I threw this one in here for Kelly because this is a great ceramic artist. But again, lots of really great behind the scenes studio photos, product shots, customer photos, mood board type photos that are more inspirational, things like that. Some of these are more rapid fire, just quick examples of what people are doing that really works. This is someone that I like to point out for anyone who maybe has a lot of information to share, whether that's like important details, frequently asked questions, or if it's inspirational content. So this is what I was talking about in terms of like having a social media text template to be sharing. So you can see all of these are the same, they're just shifted in different colors. Her name, we'll call that her logo for the purposes of this, is in the bottom at the middle. But all of these look super cohesive in her feed. This person is a therapist, so their work is sharing content that helps people. But the familiarity of it, the consistency of it, and the like super legible, super readable, easy to take a screenshot, save that in your phone for later, share that in your story, that kind of thing. So that's a way that their content becomes really engaging and dynamic, and a way to just kind of like wrap your head around how to share content if you are in a business that is, you know, maybe you don't know exactly how to share content, you know, about your work. This can maybe be helpful for that. If you have a lot of text-based work and you need to get some messages across. This is Avery. She's a local movement coach. Super awesome, but wanted to highlight just the way that she's approaching her fitness-based company, because I know that there's some fitness companies that kind of are involved with Leap In this summer. But she does a really good job of sharing videos of her workouts, videos of inspirational, just her kind of inspirational talking, which is half of her business. She's like a movement coach, but she's also like more of a emotional support kind of person. So just wanted to highlight what she's been doing. I think she has a really good approach to kind of having a fitness Instagram that reads as inspirational and not just like, here is workout after workout after workout. So just different ways to kind of diversify your feed if you feel like you're only sharing one type of content. Yeah, look to see what other people are doing. If you're like a business that's based around you yourself as a person, there's different ways to share content around that, where it doesn't get stagnant, it's still exciting, there's still difference in the feed, and you get to be creative. And this is one that is a vacation rental resource. This is, I think, kind of new for them, but it's the work of a designer named Autumn Hatchie. But I thought that this is a nice way just to show, again, if you don't have product, but maybe there's like locations to do with your work, you can share really nice styled photos of locations. There's also, this is like, I think, a website screenshot, this Stay Here rental resource thing. And then maybe this one is maybe from a pamphlet or maybe also the website. But you can be sharing content like that. You know, if you've got a really beautiful website that can create some more social media content for you, it's absolutely okay to kind of to share that across platforms if you think it'll be beneficial for people to see. So then I want to move to talking about Twitter a little bit. The main thing for Twitter would be like if connections with others, discourse, frequent links are important to your online presence, then Twitter is essential for that. Again, you can use hashtags to engage with trends and connect your work really easily with others. So this example is like, obviously No Name Brand is something as, you know, living in Canada, we're all fairly familiar with, I'm sure. It's maybe a bigger example, but we're all really familiar with the branding, and they have a really great cohesive voice on Twitter, which is something I like to point out. It's a really good example of like a branded social media presence. And yes, they're sharing product, but they're also sharing customer photos. They're sharing like really funny content that's speaking to current movements. So that for home meetings background for video conferences was obviously posted right around the time when everyone started doing Zoom meetings, that sort of thing. So just a good example to see how your branding can look overall. And then I also wanted to show Tech Alliance, just because I think that they have a good sense of their Twitter is very event content link heavy. But if that works for your business and that's something that you need to be sharing and engaging with, you know, it's a way to show that it can still look engaging and like fairly cohesive, while still being like very content heavy, and that's fine. Some of us need to be sharing a lot of content. I'm more so visual, but I recognize that some businesses center around a lot of content-based media. So think about Twitter for that. Another good one that I forgot to screenshot is the London Bicycle Cafe. If anyone is familiar with them at all, they share a lot about London municipal issues, but then they also participate with like bike culture as a whole globally. So there's ways that, especially with Twitter, you can really engage with kind of the overall, what's the word I'm looking for? The overall subject matter that you're passionate about that's maybe reflected in your business, whether that's environmental issues, local municipal issues, specific, you know, hobbies or trends, that sort of thing. Twitter is a great way to engage with all of that in a easy platform. Moving on to YouTube. Video is a great way to highlight your brand. If you prefer long form videos over like a 1 minute quick video, then YouTube would be probably your preference over something like TikTok. We all watch YouTube videos all the time. If you have a way to kind of parcel out your information from your brand into video content, then it's a great way to diversify the ways that you're showing your brand on social media. Especially useful if it's a product that you're selling and it requires like an FAQ, or if you have, you know, important information that you need to get across. It's a great platform to consider. Just a couple examples. This is a channel that I subscribe to and I watch every single one of their videos. So I just think that they're a good example, but they hop on trends really quickly and, you know, create content around that. They use hashtags really well. Their content is dynamic and engaging, and it's really well shot and really well edited. So something to look at as an inspiration. Again, for the more like fitness minds, YouTube is a great platform for anything relating to fitness. If you can do, you know, workouts, I don't know, like other things to do with that, it's a great way to show off that sort of aspect of your business. Artists, of course, use YouTube really well to go behind the scenes and show how they work, to show finished work. Honestly, ceramics is like the easiest thing to find examples of. So here's another really great ceramic artist using YouTube to just show different techniques and different aspects of their work. I do find people are really curious about all the ins and outs of each of your unique different brands. So if you can show off those different things in dynamic ways, then you'll find more engagement. And especially if you can use YouTube alongside Instagram or alongside Twitter, then you'll find that it's easier to kind of pull that engagement across multiple platforms. And this is another nice one. It's a lot of video tours of buildings that they've built, but also great if you want to see anything about, like if you want to do a studio tour or a tour of a space that you host things out of, that sort of thing. Just another good channel to look at for that. And then TikTok. So it's obviously trendy and new, but if your brand has any sort of way of working within or around trending content, you can respond to a trend, work within that. use video to highlight your work, then you can possibly find some success on TikTok. I've seen definitely for a lot of artists, I've seen a lot of artists find success with showing their process and showing their finished works, things like that. But definitely a lot of different industries could use this. And especially if you don't mind kind of a human forward focus, if you don't mind being the face of your brand, if you have things to share, to talk about, and they benefit from a quick 1-minute soundbite, then you can look into TikTok. Some people kind of think that it's silly, but there's definitely some viable social media happening through TikTok right now. So I'll just highlight a couple people who I think are doing really interesting work. This is just like a very curated approach to TikTok, which I don't see often in my scrolling. But this artist is like hand lettering artist as well, but does a lot of really interesting things around that. So a good one to see. This is a vintage brand. I thought I'd highlight this because I know there's someone selling vintage in Leap-In right now. But if you can do any sort of DIYs with your product or with your brand, DIYs are super great for TikTok. Product sourcing, product hauls, thrift hauls, that sort of thing. And there's definitely a lot of interest around sort of the environmental aspect of vintage and thrifting and that sort of thing right now. So that's something that is trending. So with TikTok, anything that is kind of happening in a current lens, you can really benefit from jumping on that platform and sharing that sort of content. And then fitness is another one that's pretty easy to kind of parcel off into 1-minute video clips on TikTok. So just included this one as well. Lots of different ways to approach like a fitness-based business online, but I think TikTok has kind of definitely shown like a new way of the really quick like workout tutorial, that sort of thing. Quick, easy meals, that sort of stuff. So just a lot to consider. And then Facebook, just want to talk about really quickly. It's kind of like, you kind of have to have it for events for certain businesses. It's a little bit hard to like really get the engagement out of Facebook unless you're really active and you're really pushing with that on there. But it also seems to be like, you kind of sometimes just have to have it. So I just thought I'd quickly show the Over Company, their local business in London. They make mama and baby things. But they have used the Facebook platform really well. They host a lot of events. They do the Modern Mom Show twice a year, typically. So anytime that you have events that you're planning, that you're hosting, Facebook is still the easiest way to plan events and get that word out that way. So something to consider. There's also built-in sort of shopping aspects to Facebook. And then there's also really great built-in customer testimonial and reviews. And if you have a physical location for your business, I generally do think that it is one of the first places people think to look for your business. So if you can have a Facebook, even just as like a default, be a little bit active on there just so it doesn't look like it's completely stagnant, which don't look at mine right now because it looks like it's stagnant. But it can be really helpful just to have, you know, that event information, storefront information, that sort of thing. But otherwise, I feel like we're all fairly familiar with Facebook businesses at this point. So this is the only example I really pulled for that. Because again, it seems a little bit more like a no-brainer. It's a little bit easier just to kind of add your content on there, especially if you pick up a lot of those like branding aspects and you have your photos. You can share content across different platforms that's the same content, but I would just suggest to try to switch up your captions a little bit so it doesn't look like you're just kind of mass sharing, just because it looks a little bit less like you would respond or engage back with people quickly and easily if it looks like it's just a copy-pasted shared thing. That makes sense? Okay. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Haven't talked this much in weeks. LinkedIn, I wanted to include as well. It's not something that I personally have felt the need to use. So I phoned a friend in on this one a little bit, but I did think that I would be remiss not to include LinkedIn for anyone who has more of like a business to business brand, or has a focus more on accessing people in the workforce and really traditional networking and that sort of thing. So I asked a friend for a couple examples of people who are using LinkedIn really well. And she came through with a couple. This is a voice actor. If you care about LinkedIn, I would just jot this name down and give him a quick look, but he has really engaging content on there. And also shows he's like sharing content on TikTok and then bringing it back into LinkedIn. So again, like multi-platform sharing of the same content, and talking about other platforms within other platforms as a way to communicate to his LinkedIn cohort, or, you know, connections that, you know, here's this other social media platform, follow me on here and look how well I'm using this, look at what you could be doing. So I feel like LinkedIn ends up being a little bit of like an entrepreneur to entrepreneur resource. People can help each other out in that way, which is pretty cool. And kind of similar for this person as well, more of a graphic designer, UX designer, but a great way to, you know, show off some really great accolades if you work frequently with larger businesses or with other businesses at all. So yeah, just thought I would highlight some of those, and then a business profile as well. Definitely a viable option if you are in that business to business sector. I think a lot of the social media talk kind of forgets that LinkedIn does have a bit of a social media aspect to it, instead of just being like sort of traditional networking. But I know that the Instagram, the Twitter, you know, TikTok, that's not going to work for everyone. And if this works more for your business, then definitely look into that more. I wish I knew a little bit more about it, just so I could give you a proper firsthand impression, but it is what it is. And I think that it's kind of speaks for itself, and you can build into it if you think that that would be helpful for your business. But yeah, I think that is overall all of the examples that I had. If anyone has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. And if anyone wants me to jump back to a certain slide to see something again, I can do that easily too.
Thanks, Alayna.
Yeah, no problem.
Can I get you to stop sharing your screen, or actually I can probably do that for you. Perfect, then we can see everyone. So does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask Alayna about social media or about her business? Christine.
Hi, thank you, Alayna, for showing all those social media platforms. It's very trendy right now. Everybody's going on that rather than visiting your website. However, I didn't notice that you point out Pinterest. Is it something that's fading out?
I just haven't personally used it well enough to speak to it. So I didn't really know how to include it super well. I know that some businesses you can kind of, if you can link it up with your like e-commerce and that sort of thing, then a lot of people have found success with that. But I find that it's generally, people find success with it if it's more of the like lifestyle bloggers, that sort of thing. Anything with more of a visual and like a human kind of content approach to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Since nobody has a question right now, I think it'd be great if you talked about a lot of the past week in the workshops, people have been asking how you kind of balance on that fine line between your business presenting itself as a business and then also presenting yourself as a person who owns that business. And I think you're very good at that, which is why I wanted you to come and speak to everyone today, because it's a really fine balance, and it obviously depends on what your business is. Like, you are somebody who's making physical things, so I think it's nice for people to know who that is. But we also have companies in here who are, doing a lot, but it's one person on their own, and I think that's also valuable for people to know, like their customers to know, that it's almost like a one-man show or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you could touch on that, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think it is really important to show people who is behind the business, just to give people perspective on, who they're asking to create something for them, or who they're interacting with, who they're emailing with. For me, I get a little bit overwhelmed when I feel like I'm a little bit too accessible with social media through SoftFlirt specifically. So I do keep it, like, my business is very personable, but it's still not quite, you don't know everything about my life, and I like to keep that kind of sort of walk that fine line. But yeah, I think that especially with sort of product-based businesses, it's a little bit easier to connect. Like, this is a person, they made this product, so when I'm buying it, I'm supporting them, they're making it, they're sending it out, they're doing all that. So if you have a business that maybe it isn't quite as obvious to people right away, if you can do a lot of kind of sharing about the behind the scenes and how you make things, or how you, I feel like I don't have the language to talk about certain industries, but if you can show a little bit more what goes into your work, just so people have a little bit of that perspective when they're interacting with your business online, it humanizes you a little bit and will help to kind of, hopefully give them like a better insight into the business as well. So yeah, I think it's important to share about yourself, but also share as much as you want to, and keep guarded as much as you want to as well. You don't have to share everything about yourself.
I have a question that came up.
Yeah.
So I wrote it down. So I was looking at when you were showing that, I forget the one, I guess it was like the blonde girl who had like all these, like the white background. It was like super like minimal and modern, and like it made me think, like, would you say do most people on social media invest in their own professional camera to shoot their own content, like DSLR, or would you suggest that?
I know that a lot of people just use iPhones, especially with some of the editing apps these days. Like, you can get some really impressive iPhone photography. If you want, though, to have, especially if you're taking product photos, it's going to always be a little bit easier to do that on a DSLR. So if you want to invest in that, I think that's absolutely a good choice. But I know a lot of people are just using iPhones. So up to you if you want to make that financial choice.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Another thing, I don't know if anybody mentioned this at the beginning, but Alayna did Leap in 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were
First
the
year.
right?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
2016.
Oh, okay.
2017, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in sharing your experience? And I think everyone would like to know maybe how the program is different, what they can get out of it, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, we were the first year of the Leap In cohort, so it was definitely like, we didn't know what to expect because the program hadn't existed yet. And but it was really fantastic. Like, for me, it was definitely a lesson in community and networking, and like learning how to work with each other. I still am like in contact with a lot of my Leap cohort, and we check in and we do one brag, one drag every once in a while if we can get together, which is fun. But it definitely set me up for, the thing I liked about it was it just gives you kind of like a little taste of every aspect of business that you could possibly need to think about. And then it lets you know where you're lacking, where you need to do more work. It lets you know maybe where you're like onto something and you're doing okay. So for me, it was kind of like business boot camp. And it was very helpful in figuring out where I needed to go and what needed to change. And I had like just before Leap In started, I had like a really small part-time job, but I was basically starting to do SoftFlirt full-time at that point. So I really needed that assistance at that point in time. And so it was really, really, really useful and integral to helping me grow to the point I'm at now. So loved Leap In.
We love that you loved Leap In.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions for Alayna?
I actually do have a random question. I see a professional sewing machine in your background. So,
Yeah.
and you're in London. Do you offer like for retail, like putting together products and like sewing, and or do you have any connections in London? Because I actually tried to. There was this, I think it's called like the sewing something on like by the Greyhound terminal.
The sewing studio?
Yeah, the sewing studio. But besides that, I was kind of like, I hit a wall. Like I couldn't really find other people.
I don't know if there is anyone who is that I could recommend. I'm definitely not, because I'm just far too busy to keep up with my own stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I understand.
But there's definitely, I don't know that there's necessarily like a professional business that's established business, but if you maybe reach out on maybe like Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji types of ad sourcing, like there's definitely a lot of skilled people who can sew in the city that just might need a little bit more guidance. So
okay, thank you so much. I'll definitely try to reach out through those and see what I can find. Awesome.
All right, any last questions for anybody before we wrap up? Okay, well, in case that you do think of anything, I'm sure Alayna wouldn't mind answering anything quick. Alayna, is it okay if we share your contact info with everybody?
for sure.
Yeah, you guys can find Alayna SoftFlirt everywhere. You might find, I was in a Zoom call the other day where both of us were wearing the same SoftFlirt shirt and it was really funny. Yeah, so I'm sure you'll see it around London or stop by the market where Alayna has her shop, which is really beautiful. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to everybody. We all really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody wave goodbye to Alayna.
Thanks, Alayna. That was a great presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alayna.
Hi, Alayna. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And